are not going to stop the Falcon from flying, more than likely. Now, T-minus 26 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. The Falcon 9 first stage booster you see here at the center of pad 40 is going to be making its 15th flight on this mission. So before we go ahead and hit the big vent, a little less than 6 minutes from now, let's go ahead and walk through some of that booster history for you. Step back in time and talk about the legacy of booster tail number 1069 in the SpaceX fleet. The booster here first launched back on December 21st, 2021. It was a cargo resupply mission to the space station called the Commercial Resupply Services, or CRS-24 mission. That was followed up on August 28th, 2022, with the launch of this booster's first Starlink flight. That was Starlink Group 4-23. The third mission came on October 15th, 2022, when it launched the Hotbird 13F satellite. It and another Eutelsat satellite would go on to replace Hotbirds 8, 9, and 10 at the company's 13-degree east position. The fourth launch came on December 8th, 2022. This was launch number 15 for OneWeb, sending up a batch of satellites for its internet constellation. Somewhat similar to the Starlink constellation for SpaceX. These satellites, in fact, were built not too far from where we are right now, here on Merritt Island. Satellites are manufactured at a facility called the Airbus OneWeb Satellites. And they have a configuration where as they're operating at full steam, they can produce, I believe, 2 satellites per day at full speed. Obviously, that's driven by customer need. Launch number 5 for this particular booster was the Starlink 5-3 mission on February 2nd, 2023. Next up came a launch for a Luxembourg-based company, SES. Of course, the big news on SES in recent days was its acquisition of Intelsat, a big acquisition, which you can hear a conversation about in our latest episode of News from the Press site. You can find that on our YouTube channel right now. Maybe not right now because you're listening to this stream, but after we go ahead and wrap up this launch, you can pop over there and listen to our latest News from the Press site. It is a video podcast, but of course, if you just want to throw that on in the background of whatever else you're doing on this Monday afternoon as we cruise into Monday evening before the coverage that we have for the Starliner launch begins. Good way to fill the time. Back to this booster, though, that SES mission was the launch of the satellites SES-18 and 19, launching back on March. A series of Starlink satellite missions. You have Starlink 5-6, which launched on Star Wars Day back last year, May 4th, or May the 4th be with you. Starlink 5-12 came on June 23rd. That was followed by Starlink 6-9 on August 11th, 6-19 on September 30th, 6-28 on November 18th, 6-36 on December 29th, 6-39 on February 11th, and most recently, Starlink 6-47 coming back on April 5th of this year. We are now T-minus 22 minutes, 6 seconds and counting. Just a couple minutes away from the start of the so-called big vent, a good visual sign that fueling is moving forward on time. The venting happens as they're chilling the feed lines prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. That process of second stage LOX load kicks off at T-minus 16 minutes. Were you made up by the first stage of the rocket? Today's booster has flown 14 times before, looking for its 15th flight tonight. Again, tail number 1069 in the SpaceX fleet. At the base of the first stage are the 9 Merlin engines, burning a rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, and produce 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs, which are used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure which consists of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. You see that image there on the right-hand side of your screen. You can see the deployable first, like a big old dart towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the Falcon9 second stage. At first stage main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release the latches before pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. The second stage engine nozzle is also housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage is powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVac engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 200,000 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight, placing the 23 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. Same as the first stage, the upper stage burns the same propellant mix, that is RP1 and LOX. Following satellite deployment, that upper stage engine will ignite a third time for a deorbit burn, which will drive the upper stage back into the atmosphere, where it will burn up and help to eliminate the risk of any unnecessary space debris on this mission. Now T-minus 12 minutes, 14 seconds and counting. Moving up to the last bit of the Falcon 9 here at the top of the rocket are the payload fairings, which encapsulate the 23 Starlink satellites. They are made up of a carbon composite material standing 13.1 and are 5.2 meters or 17 feet in diameter. The two halves of the payload fairings will be recovered a little further downrange from where the first stage lands on the drone ship. As we showed you earlier, they gently splash down under parachutes. We'll revisit that trajectory map in just a little bit here. Once the 6-57 mission on tap, but of course we're also keeping eyes on United Launch Alliance's Atlas V rocket. As President and CEO Torio Bruno would say, the mighty Atlas standing ready and waiting to launch its first crewed flight to the International Space Station. You see the Starliner spacecraft atop the Atlas V stack, getting ready to welcome NASA astronauts, highly experienced NASA astronauts, Butch Wilmore, who's the commander of the CFT, or Crew Flight Test Mission, and pilot Sonny Williams, who will run the Starliner spacecraft through its paces on the way to the International Space Station. They'll stay docked at the ISS for about a week or so before undocking and returning for a land landing in the southwestern United States. Boeing, the manufacturer of the spacecraft, has about 5. We're now T-minus 5 minutes, 37 seconds and counting. As promised, let's go ahead and hit trajectory one more time for those that were not with us at the beginning. This is a satellite view of Pad 40, or Space Launch Complex 40, over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Also hearing some of the fueling and venting noises here.
Strong back lower has started.
And that call out the beginning of the strongback retract sequence that I was just mentioning. The transporter erector, or the strongback, will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. And you see those clamp arms opening up there. If you take a look at the SpaceX timer at the bottom of the screen versus our countdown clock, just wanted to note the reason for that discrepancy. Our clock is
Stage 2 LOX load complete.
In real time, and the clock from SpaceX coming in about a 10-second or so delay. So as we are tracking events on the ground, we'll be referencing them, of course, in real time. Now 50 seconds to lift off.
Falcon 9 is in startup. LD, go for launch.
And with the call out, SpaceX is targeting liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket, now 23 seconds away. "15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-57 mission. The Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. And a beautiful ascent as the Falcon 9 rocket begins to climb in the skies above the Sunshine State. Now 36 seconds into count. Let's listen to the roar of those 9 Merlin 1D engines. We're now a minute into flight. Falcon 9 is approaching max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Falcon 9 traveling faster than the speed of sound. It's supersonic.
Max Q.
Here's that call for max Q. Some great tracking by our team here, looking at a view from Adam Bernstein's camera here at the press site. This from our friend Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions. Coming into a few different events in rapid succession as we look at a view here from Pete. See MECO, or main engine cutoff, at about 2.5 minutes into flight. That'll be followed a few seconds later by stage separation, and then second stage engine start. The payload fairings will be deployed just a little after 3 minutes into this mission. About 5 seconds to MECO.
Nominal trajectory.
You see MECO. Stage separation. And SES-1.
Stage separation confirmed. vac ignition.
Some great onboard camera views for this afternoon launch today. Less than 10 seconds away from payload fairing jettison. Some great tracking views from our friend Pete Carson's here on the ground. And there go the fairings. See that from the onboard camera views momentarily.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And in this view, you can see those Starlink satellites now exposed to the vacuum of space for the first time on this mission. 3.5 minutes into flight. In the upper right-hand box, you can see the Falcon 9 first stage, those hypersonic grid fins beginning to shift just a little bit. The bursts you're seeing are the cold gas thrusters that help adjust the attitude of the first stage vehicle. And depending on the amount of cloud between us and the Falcon 9 first stage and the brightness, we may, and I will emphasize may, be able to see the entry burn beginning. It's a little tricky when it's this bright and got a few cumulus clouds kind of hanging around, but we will do our level best to bring
Orbital initiation signal confirmed.
That to you if we are able. Now a little more than 4.5 minutes into flight. The next milestone we're anticipating is that entry burn beginning. That'll start at about T plus 6 minutes and 11 seconds. The burn lasting 21 seconds in total. And some great views of the Bahamas there. Got some friends or family in the area. Tell them to look up, they may see something interesting. Now a little more than 5 minutes into flight. So far all appears to be going nominally with the Falcon 9 first and second stages. And a great view of Earth from the onboard cameras of the Falcon 9 second stage as well. The reason you're seeing them toggle back and forth between the two camera views is not just for show, but it's an engineering effect so that they can get continuous views of both sides of the Merlin vacuum engine, make sure there's a good even burn. Coming up on 6 minutes into flight. We're now just about 10 seconds away from the entry burn beginning. Should be getting underway now. In real time, that is. We'll see it begin on the Falcon 9.
Stage 1 FTS has safed.
Onboard cameras.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
There, you hear that call out? The beginning of the entry burn here. It's hard to catch it with our on-the-ground cameras and these kinds of lighting conditions, so unfortunately, we weren't able to snag that for you today. It's a little bit easier with a night launch on a clear night.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
Nominal trajectory.
All good callouts from SpaceX as we come in on the 7th minute of the flight. Coming up next will be the first stage landing burn beginning. That happens at about T plus 7 minutes and 55 seconds. Again, if all goes well, this will be the 81st landing of a booster on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. And the 304th booster landing to date. About 20.
Stage 1 transonic.
About 20 seconds from that landing burn beginning. That call out you heard, Falcon 9 now traveling below the speed of sound. You could see as a result of that entry burn, slowing down the vehicle rapidly. That combined with the atmospheric drag, slowing the vehicle appropriately to get to the point where the landing burn can offer a soft touchdown on the drone ship. The landing burn is happening in
Stage 1, landing burn.
There we go.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Stage 1, landing leg deploy.
And with that,
Stage 1, landing confirmed.
a good touchdown of the Falcon 9 first stage booster, tail number 1069, landing for a 15th time. While we didn't hear the call out, it appeared that that was a good shutdown of the Merlin vacuum engine and likely a good orbital insertion. So at this point, the Falcon 9 first stage, or excuse me, the second stage will enter into a coast phase at parking orbit. That lasts until about T plus 54 minutes and 14 seconds. There will be a brief 2-second burn of that upper stage, setting up for Starlink satellite deployment at T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 23 seconds.